Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Monday special session of Crypto with English. I'd like to warmly welcome a returning, highly accomplished, and highly fascinating guest with a very, with a very deep, very specialized, and esoteric and broad knowledge of health, both in Eastern and Western medicine. Dr. Pat Boulogne. We are here today to celebrate the digital launch, which is on March 10th, of Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? An incredible book. And mind you, the physical hard copy launch of this book will be on March 15th, which you can find both on Amazon. Dr. Boulogne, thank you very much for coming back onto this live stream. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm very excited to be here, and I always love being back here. It's very stimulating, and I love it's a great platform to share knowledge and help your listeners have a better life and be vibrant and healthy.
Absolutely. And I especially feel whether you're in tech, whether you're doing anything else, health is one of these things you really need to take ownership of and really have sovereignty over. And there is never a limit, and nor should there be, on really the amount of knowledge and wisdom you can learn from books or other individuals who have a specialized knowledge in this. So in the first two episodes, we did more of kind of a broader, I guess you could say bird's eye view of your book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Kind of leading up to this episode in which we're going to be celebrating the launch on the digital on March 10th and the physical launch on March 15th. So what I really liked about this book are the 7 important questions that you use as kind of the preface and almost kind of the overriding scope of how to, I think, take this book and probably how to process this book. And in fact, I would say those 7 questions, at least this is my take from it, these are kind of 7 questions of one's mortality, by the way. And I don't mean that in a negative way. All of these things that we do in our life, kind of the broader habits and the micro habits that we do day in and day out, especially as to our diet, as to the way we manage energy, as to the way we sleep. These all directly reflect on how we're essentially going to perform as, let's say, if we're an engine, and really what is going to be, I guess you could say, what are going to be the cracks in that and how to maybe adjust and pivot away and, mitigate a lot of those problems as essentially as a car or as the human engine as we are going on this journey. So, just as kind of a preamble of the book, that's one hell of a haymaker. And I really do like that. So if you wish, we can go right to those 7 questions.
Sure. Awesome. Let's do that. Because I think that's a good place. It's a very, very good place to start. And
absolutely.
And also it helps people qualify whether or not this book right now is for them, excuse me, or not.
Right.
And so the questions are important because they, a lot of people are not really in touch with their health. But when you ask these questions, it makes them give cause to pause and think.
Right.
And so, some of these questions in my rule for these is that if you answer yes to any of these questions, then this book is for you. And the first thing to do immediately would be get this book, read it, do the questionnaires that are in the book, which will tell you where to focus your time, energy, and money on what organ system is not in a good place. And then, also maybe talk with me in regards to what this all means. Like, what does it mean in my big plan of my life? And like, how do I get there?
Right.
I am so sorry.
No worries.
So the first question is a very general question. And that question just generally ask you is how's your health been in the last 2 years? How do you feel your health? Has it declined or is it worsened in the last 2 years? And a lot of people, they're either going to say yes or no. And the second question here is important because, a lot of people have weight changes, either going up and getting heavier or going down. And in the last 5 years, especially the last 2 years, at least by 10%.
Right.
So if, 10%, if you weigh 200 now, 10% of that is 20 pounds.
Right.
And so you have to take a look at, if that's a factor. The other question is, do you have difficulty falling or staying asleep? A lot of people tell me, like, I don't sleep. I mean, I get up, I don't go back to sleep, or I get up, and I try to go back to sleep, and then I realize, I'm getting up exhausted in the morning. So the question is clearly is, do you have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep? And the fourth question is,
Right.
do you take any prescription medications?
Right.
And then the fifth question is, you take any over-the-counter prescription or non-prescription medications for pain or inflammation, upset stomach, or to help you sleep? And then the sixth question is, has your doctor told you that you have any blood pressure, blood glucose, or cholesterol issues? So, and the last one is just a simple question: is, do you catch every cold or flu that goes around? So a lot of these questions, diving deeper into them is a simple thing to do. It's just like, over the counter. A lot of people say no, but then they forget that they take aspirin. Aspirin is an over the counter prescription, non-prescription. And, and also for inflammation, and which can upset your stomach. And so like that's like the acids. There's so many people who take antacids in order to function. People take Prilosec or Nexium, those proton inhibitors. And, and a lot of people have issues with blood pressure, how they're handling sugar, and they have issues with how they're handling fat. And a lot of people who have just, weak immune systems, that, they walk into a bookstore and like they're immediately affected and get congested, or if they eat something in about an hour or so, or even right away get congested, you've got some reactions going on in the body. So if you said yes to any of these questions, just take them in their pure content, then this book's for you.
Right. And listen, I'll be the first one to admit, I can already say yes to at least one of these questions. Do you have difficulty falling or staying asleep? Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with, let's say, my coffee intake, or maybe just like using like my iPhone or laptop before I go to sleep, which I know is probably not great to do with all the blue light coming out of it. But I would have to say, yeah, this book is for me.
So which other ones would you say yes to?
I would say yes to... I do periodically would take over the counter. So if I get migraines, I used to have like more so years ago, not so much now, but every now and then, like migraines or like these cluster headaches, then yeah, I would take something like an aspirin or some sort of anti-inflammatory, type of drug to, deal with that for sure.
Sure, and so the answer would be yes. And because if you had one today, you would take something for it because you've got things that you want to complete, and that's so the answer would be yes. And do you feel that your health has declined in the last 2 years, or is it the same?
It's definitely gotten better, and I think especially since I've been working remotely. I do a lot of my exercises just either right by my, or in my home office right next to my desk, or I have like weight equipment and exercise equipment in my garage, and I'll just go and do that. So in fact, at least for me, I've kind of at least in that regard taken advantage of the benefit of just doing everything remotely. So I can really zip back and forth. If I have to exercise, go running, I can do that and just be right back at my desk and just resume what I'm doing. So I would say it's gotten better. I actually feel better now than in my 20s, and I was very active in my 20s. So
okay. And so the sleep things that you talk about, the blue light, that can affect you, and coffee can affect you. But why would coffee not affect one person and then affect you? So you got to take a look at what's going on in the chemistry of the body, and and how it's being processed, because everyone's different, and how you're going to handle toxins in your system is going to be different from person to person, depending upon what their epigenetics and, and that gene pool is like, and how that's evolving out into the environment. But anyways, these are the basic questions, for somebody to say like, hey, can you answer yes to, like if you answered yes to any of these, then this book's for you. So you are lucky because you are in possession of my PDF copy. So,
right. I'm front row and center right now. So I'm
Mhm.
very happy to very happy to go through this.
Mhm.
So I have a
Great.
question. How did you come up with these specific 7 questions? Because they are very straightforward and they're broad, but this isn't exactly intuitive either. Like if somebody asked me, Adam, and by the way, I know I'm not a health expert, but I think for most people, if you were to come up with 7 questions to kind of summarize or encapsulate whether somebody's health is getting better over time or getting worse over time, this pretty much summarizes it. I mean, I think whether you're an expert or a layperson, this is it right here.
Well, these are questions that I have used in the past, and I have been taught from my teachers, and from different angles. And I've interviewed and have had have done so much intake with patients over 38 years that there's certain things that always seem to pop up that people always tell me, that the big things, like not sleeping, and when I ask people about their meds, they will tell me like they take like, and their supplements fall right in there, because some people take supplements like melatonin. If you're, that's an over-the-counter, type of thing. Or if you're taking, vitamins, there's some vitamins that you might be taking that might be doing more harm than good. And so, that all falls under this category. But how I ended up with these, in a nutshell, is that, I've used them in the past. I've used them from, I have, years ago been taught by my teachers that these were always good questions. And these basically handle just your general health. Because if you say yes to any of these, then I'm going to want to dive deeper into a specific organ system, whether or not it's your cells in your body talking to other cells in your body, whether it's detoxification, whether it's a gut problem, because you want to find out why this is happening here. And so you've got to go deep, you got to go inside, and from inside you have to work out. Musculoskeletal, like your endocrine system, the glucose metabolism system that you have in your body. So all those things that, you got to take a look at. But this is where those came from, was from a general, like, information I've always used when I first start talking to somebody. If I'm out at a cocktail party or something like that, I'll ask them, because this is like really non-invasive. You're not asking, too much, if you're in a social situation, but it gives you a good clue, and it's easy for me.
Absolutely.
I just give them my card, or I get their contact information, and I schedule a time with them to talk about their health.
Right. And by the way, everybody, I would also like to remind that Dr. Boulogne is both a Western medical doctor and also an accomplished Eastern medicine practitioner of acupuncture. So having the benefit of both of those expertises, how much is of, let's say, the Eastern medicine side is reflected in this? Because I like to go and get acupuncture. And in fact, I would have to say my life has genuinely improved with acupuncture. Seriously, like more than a lot of just over-the-counter stuff. And I can't even, obviously I can't even overstate, or I can't emphasize enough how beneficial acupuncture is. But I do recall when I first started getting acupuncture, one of the questions the acupuncturist asked me was actually about my sleep. Do you have difficulty falling or staying asleep? Mm-hmm. So I look at these questions and I'm like, this does seem familiar. And they did ask me about blood pressure too.
Well, that's called the system survey, and so just a little bit clarity on my background is that I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I have certification in functional medicine, when I have the same education as a medical doctor, except for the pharmaceuticals. And so, in matter of fact, I have a good chunk of 400 plus hours, more than they have in the understanding of the workings of the body. But I also I'm also an acupuncture physician. Besides that, so I have certification in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and the product of like functional medicine, lifestyle medicine, as a lifestyle medicine first line practitioner. So I have textured background in understanding what's really going on with somebody.
Right.
So you were asking me a question. Can you repeat the question so I make sure I
Yes.
understand it?
As far as your expertise in Eastern medicine, how much of that is reflected in these 7 questions? Because, like I said, when I first saw an acupuncturist, some of these questions were along those lines. They asked about my sleep and asked about my blood pressure.
Okay, so all doctors, doesn't matter if they're East or West, should be
Right.
asking you those questions. So that's number one. And so number two, and the Eastern part of it, it's just like they're going to ask you that because they want to know how the meridians are working in the body.
Right.
And all the meridians talk to each other. It's like all the organ systems talk to each other too. It's like they
Right.
all, in both ecosystems, they both are very confluent with each other and congruent with each other as far as like working together. So there's things, the difference that I see in acupuncture and Western medicine, perhaps, is that in Chinese medicine and Oriental medicine, they look at, it's just like, why do you have something? Where is it coming from? Look for the root
Right.
problem. Most of the time in Western medicine, you have high blood pressure. So there's an array of high blood pressure meds that you're going to take in order to get back. They don't always address, some do, but they don't always address the, alternative, like looking, or the lifestyle medicine approach of looking at the diet, looking at exercise, and looking at targeted supplementation before you actually go to a med and use it. So a lot of times they start with the med and they work forward from that.
Wow. Okay. And just for some further context, could you explain what meridians are? And I would like to say to some of my audience out there, they're more than just pressure points that you see in like action and martial arts movies. So meridians are very, very important for the overall health of the body. So if Dr. Boulogne, if you can kind of go into that a little bit more.
Well, anatomical position in Western medicine is being standing up with your palms forward and your arms at your side. Chinese medicine, anatomical position is with your hands over the top of your head, like I have kind of like
Wow.
right here. And
Yeah.
so what the rule is that meridians that start on the hand and come down to the face, go from the face and they go down to the feet. That's how they connect to the next branch. And from the feet,
Right.
they come back up to the chest and they go back out to the arms. And so
Right.
the meridians are energy flows for each individual organ system. The first acupuncture needle that was ever discovered was a jade needle, like in the 6th century BC or AD. It was one of those two.
Wow.
And they found the remnants of that. So at one point in time, a wise Chinese doctor, took like what was going on in the body as a river, because you have the mouth of the river, and the river goes down into like the countryside. And what it does is like, it has all this food here, and it takes all the food here and it takes it through all the systems, all the channels. So they're kind of like channels of where things go. So for instance, the lung meridian, and you can probably see right here, lung meridian starts about this far. If you take your hand and put it underneath your clavicle, the bone here, the collarbone. And so if you go down, you'll feel like if you put your arm up slightly like this, you can feel a hole. And, it feels like there's indentation. And then just slightly
like
below that, about 1 inch down is where the lung meridian emerges from the body. And then it comes up and it goes down the outside of the arm and it ends at the tip of the thumb. Right. And so from somewhere along that line, just above the wrist, it connects with the large intestine. And the large intestine goes down to the first finger and starts there and runs all the way up to across, and it ends on the other side of the face, just on the other side of the nostril. And then the stomach meridian connects with that. And then from the stomach meridian, that runs all the way down to the foot. So remember I said from the head down to the foot?
Yes.
So you have an experience of that. And then the stomach meridian comes up and connects with the spleen. And the spleen comes up and it ends on the side of the torso. So it comes back up into the chest. and that. So
Right.
they all do that. It's pretty interesting. And they also have like the circadian cycle where certain organ systems tonify, have to do their thing at a specific hour in Chinese medicine. So for instance, the gallbladder is between 11 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning. And the
Wow.
liver meridian has that time between 1 and 3. And from
Right.
3 to 5 is the lung. So if you're finding that some point in time during the night, you're going to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, but you're not staying asleep, it might be relevant to know what time you're waking up. If it's between 11 and 1, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and
Right.
then, and so, or like if there's a certain time of the day that you get absolutely downright exhausted,
Right.
and so it's just like, what time is that? Because then you can go back and you can see how the pieces of the puzzle fit together. And then you can take that information and you can look at like, what are the solutions?
Wow. Very well said. And it's very interesting, especially that I guess you could say the original founder or practitioner of acupuncture conceptualized this, I guess you could say, this school of thought, this body of medicine as a river. So if we're kind of going back into some of the more specifics as far as experiences of acupuncture, whenever I saw an acupuncturist, whenever they would essentially and insert the acupuncture needles into my skin, it was on my head and it was on my feet.
Uh-huh.
Most of the time. So does that play into, I guess you could say, the concept of it being a river? I guess you could have the mouth of the river, and I guess you could have, I guess you could say the opposite end, that,
Well,
so to say.
you can take a look at the heart, right?
Yeah.
And the heart, you breathe in air. The air
Right.
interchanges with the blood and supplies it with more oxygen. So that goes to the heart, and the job of the heart is to pump it out to all the parts of the body. So then that goes there. So if you're looking at those kind of channels like arteries and veins, because what goes out's got to come back up. But
Right.
like a lot of the blood's always sent to the liver to help detoxify any toxins out of it, and then be able to utilize the nutrients from that, for other functions in the body. So that in Chinese medicine, they say the liver spreads qi all over the body.
Yes.
So you have, the idea, the concept of like, of how the body functions, like when they had to have done autopsies, and opened people up to find out, like, well, where does this go, and where does that go? And so it's interesting, the history of that. And because I was a chiropractor before I went to acupuncture school, one day I had this aha moment when one of my teachers was explaining something about the gallbladder and, the stomach meridian and all these meridians that like the like small intestine and certain meridians on the yang side, which those are all organs that are draining out of your system. And so I take a look at that and go like, wow, that's really, really interesting. And he had this concept that, and explained that all those meridians all cross over just below the base of your neck. And I thought for all the years that I was a chiropractor, it was like this aha moment, like, well, that's why, because there's so many people who have gallbladder problems and have fat metabolism and carbohydrate metabolism problems. A lot of times they always complain about, they're going like, it hurts right behind my neck, like when I go to put my neck back or something like that. Chiropractically, I heard that so many times. And so when I went to acupuncture school, I went like, wow, that's why. And when you're looking at the functional medicine portion of it, which I practice in my clinic, when I had my clinic, I work virtually now. But it was so interesting to like a piece of the puzzle, went into place and the bright light went on. It was really cool.
One of those aha moments.
Well, it was easy because it made it easier to help people, and like just like it created like, wow, there's a solution, that I did naturally. Now I know why, that was happening.
Right. And I was wondering too, could you explain what qi is? Because it is relatively controversial, from literature that I've come across. And to be honest, even though, let's say, whether you say Western science or medicine can't maybe adequately explain it, or there's literature out there that dismisses it, there is also tangible evidence that at least the notion or you could say the context of this or the substance of this, it exists. There is something as far as what defines chi. And I guess if you look at, evidence, you look at incredible feats and let's say martial arts that have been recorded in history, and then you look at the life expectancy of the longest living people on earth. They're in Okinawa, Japan, and also parts of other parts of Eastern Asia as well. And a lot of people who have these very long lives past 100, these are people who are, using acupuncture in their lives. These are people who are, practicing things like Tai Chi, other forms of martial arts, people who are kind of more in line with the Eastern experience and thinking. So if you can kind of get into the weeds of what is chi and how does one define it?
Well, chi is the energy in the body. So it's best explained like it's like an electrical network, and it's just like when I just got them talking about like the lung meridian goes to here, connects to the large intestine meridian, the large intestine goes here, connects to the stomach meridian goes all the way down to the feet, connects to the spleen meridian. So chi is an energy in the body, and it's the best way is like electrical circuits, like in your house. Like you have a fuse box, and then you have these wires that go everywhere. And so it's the same kind of thing in the body, but it's the energy flow, it's the life flow of the body. When you don't have any chi, you're dead. And so, but where, someplace that people express a lot of chi at is in their lungs. And so, when somebody who has weak lung chi, then number 7 will always be an answer, will be the yes. Because those people catch colds easy, they get sick easier and that. So there's ways to improve that. And you can probably equate good, strong chi to having a good, strong immune system. In that regard. So it's there, that energy always works. If anyone's ever had muscle stem where they put the pads on your body and they put the pads someplace else and they turn the electrical current up, you cannot tell me like that one pad's talking to the other pad and it's making the muscle do something. That's a forced chi movement. And the idea is to create, flow so you get rid of the inflammation out of the area and the area has an opportunity to heal faster. So, and the body, that happens also. When an acupuncturist puts in the needle, they want to achieve chi. And a lot of times people experience as like a slight electrical shock, like, yep, you got it. And, don't go any deeper, or that's perfectly fine. And let it sit and you stimulate it. So it opens, so it wakes that part of the body up. So when you're needling somebody, that's what acupuncturists are looking for. They're looking for to achieve chi and have it connect. So that network, lights up and all the things that are supposed to light up, work, and they work better afterwards.
Wow. So let's say in the context of martial arts, for anybody who's either practiced it or seen in a movie. So if you look at, let's say, traditional Japanese karate, there is a kia, a shout once you execute a punch. And the characters, and I believe you could say the translation is essentially a chi shout, kia, so to say. So what I noticed is, let's say executing that shout, and let's say if chi or ki comes from the lungs, it feels like essentially your circulation and your muscles are kind of like a battering ram. So it just feels like some sort of automatic focus and alignment at that very, very moment. So, I guess looking at that, I would say that's probably a context of chi or ki rather, whether it's, obviously being acted upon something, but it's definitely something that very much exists.
Yes,
to say the very least.
It does, and you can also feel it, like when you hit your funny bone,
right?
For instance, like when you hit that funny bone, that nerve flow goes down. So you're saying, well, that's nerve flow, but that also is energy. It's semantics sometimes about what words actually use, and what it means. So it's just like for your whole energy field. which has been, photographed with people on Killian photography, right? And so
Right.
when they take a picture, your aura, you can
Sure.
see that energy field, emanating from someone's body based upon that type of photography.
Right. And before moving forward, so I do have a question. So speaking of, excuse me, ki and chi, um, nowadays with a lot of, I guess you could say, martial arts training equipment, they have essentially like these dummies that they're built out of steel or some sort of similar material, and they have pads in certain areas. And if you hit the pads, they measure the PSI, so to say,
Mm-hmm.
pounds per square inch.
Yep.
So I've noticed when I've used this with a friend and used this at, like, let's say other, you could say, training studios and whatnot, if I punched it regularly, but versus whether I punched it with like a ki, like with that lung shout, so to say, the PSI is greater, so to say. So clearly more power and more force is being exerted.
Well,
Would you be, yes.
Well, I would, say, like when you're in your groove,
Yes.
when you know that like things are like rocking and rolling in your sphere,
Yes.
you've got a higher level of energy, and you'd be able to use that energy in a more directed form, hopefully for good.
Right.
And and so when you're able to use that, you're more on target, you're on purpose, you have intention, you have focus, you're moving forward, and you can clearly see where you're going.
Right. That is incredible. As well. All right. So moving forward through
Yeah.
through the book here. Now you have a very, very interesting statistic coming up, but I want you to kind of explain this section here. So you're kind of elaborating and giving people their why, as far as why you should take this journey, go through this book. And I really do like what you say down here: be stronger than your excuses. Because listen, there's many excuses for many things, especially in this day and age. And a lot of times when it comes to, I guess you could say, the overall busyness of life, health tends to come at the bottom for many. And I've made this mistake in my life too. And frankly speaking, it should be at the top. So can you go into, I guess, some of your musings here, and some of your feelings that were expressed in this section?
Okay, so let me see where we're at exactly. So, when I talk about being stronger than your excuses, no matter what your excuse is, doesn't matter if it's for your health or for your life or for your work or whatever, when you start saying, or you screwed up, and instead of owning it, and
Right.
saying like, gosh, that's right. Like, what can I do to correct it? You start making excuses like, sometimes stuff happens. Let's just say that we know that. But
Right.
repetitious stuff is like not a good thing. A lot of people don't take consideration for their health. And you said it yourself that you've done it yourself. I've done it
Oh
myself.
yeah.
Everyone has that moment. Like if I'm traveling on a road trip, and I have certain, I have certain things that, like I'm trying to get to a certain place, I might skip lunch, and just
Right.
decide
I've
to
done
drive
that. Yeah. Start
and
skipping
drive
meals during the day.
through,
Yeah.
and it's just like, or like, getting that nutrition because you want to stay very focused, especially if you have a long trip to go through.
Right.
So, the thing of being stronger than an excuse is just like, you have to ask yourself, okay, I'm not going to take care of my health. It's like, is that a smart thing to do? And the answer is no. And so it's just, there's not another answer. And because you need your health for everything.
Right.
So when people tell me, it's just like, oh, I don't know, can't figure out how to get forward. And a lot of
Right.
time they're in a state of confusion because they're eating poorly and they're not making good decisions about anything, including themselves. So
Right.
you have to take a look at like what, when someone tells me what their excuse is, like I was on a podcast with this guy in Australia, and
Yes.
and I go, let's take you for instance. And he said, he goes, well, I don't know. And he goes, I go, give me an excuse. He goes, I
Right.
leave in the morning, I don't get back, and I don't eat till when I get home. And by the time I get home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I eat my meal for the day, and then I go to sleep. And I said, well, that's not good. And because first off, you're not hydrating. Secondly, I go, is it possible that you could take, like if you bought like, pre-measured in their container, protein, medical food with you so that you could take that throughout the day?
Right.
And so, and he said, yes. You know, is it possible? Would it be a hassle for you if you took a jug of water in your car with you, you know, and took a shaker so that you could do these things like throughout the day? So you would have
Right.
enough protein to sustain your energy and also your brain function. Who wants to lose their brain?
Right.
You know, and so you know you need to be able to have the right glucose levels, and you have to be able to maintain those things. So in order to do that, you need to have food throughout the day, whether it's a shake or whether in a good shake, because not all of them are made the same. And
Right.
you know, and then when you get to your dinner, you're not overfilling yourself up, and where you have the opportunity, your body's so stressed that it's going to start taking whatever you ate and make it into fat, and then you have
Oh,
layers
right.
upon layers of fat on your body.
It's very
So,
true.
you know, talking about this, like, you know, being stronger excuse, it's just like, you know, anytime someone says, I can't do something, you really got to ask yourself, like, why is it I can't do that? You know, and it's just
Yeah.
like, because sometimes things are just not for you. But your
Right.
answer about your health should never be, I'm not interested in my health, because you've got to be there. If you're married, if you've got family, if you want, you know, if you want to be around for when your daughter starts
Right.
dating somebody, so you can take them, say, like, don't you ever take my daughter out again.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, what do you mean you're taking my daughter where? You know, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Go up to your room. You know, but having that ability to be there, you're going to have to take care of yourself now so that you can
For sure.
you can reap the benefits of your good health, and you have something in your bank to use in the unfortunate event that something happens. Because if you don't have your
Right.
bank full, you know, then when something does
I like
happen,
that
because
analogy.
you
Yeah.
know, we always have something that happens at some point in time, you know, then you have to take a look at, like, well, what is that? It's just like, I need to have, you know, that health, because being there as a parent, being there as, you know, for
Right.
my parents, or, you know, for my wife's parents, whoever, you know, you have to be there. And so that's, there's no excuse for not having good health,
Right. And by the
having the
way,
best health you possibly can have.
absolutely. And by the way, I'll be the first one to admit one of my excuses was productivity. And I think that was a very bad slippery slope, because that can be like almost like you could say a proper justification. Like, this has to get done. I have to do this. And then it's like, okay, I can't eat lunch right now. I can't stop. I can't hydrate. This absolutely has to get done. And you know what happens is that exhaustion carries on to the following day and to the rest of the week, at least in my experience, because I felt like, okay, it's just going to take too much energy for me to slow down, eat a proper meal. Let me just snack a little bit, keep throwing back coffee, and just keep going on. And I'll tell you this, before, and I don't do this really anymore, I almost always regretted it, so to say.
Well, you know, because it has a cumulatory effect. So, like,
Yeah.
if you don't eat properly, then something's going to happen. Like, you know, because you eat food to sustain your body. So if you're not
Right.
sustaining your body, then you're actually being abusive to your body if you're
Right.
not giving it the nutrition and activity that it needs and the sleep that it needs in order to go from one point to another. And that's an important thing. So when you're just like, you know, and I do that too. Sometimes if I'm working on a project, I'll look at the time and go, or when my dog was alive, I go, Jack, let me think about when I took him out. It's just like,
Yeah.
I want to finish this one part, you know, and then, you know, sometimes, and as soon as I would start getting into that one part, it kept on ruminating in the back of my mind. So I wasn't focused on what I was doing anyway. So I would just pick him up and take him outside and spend a half hour with him, you know, and then we'd
Yeah.
come back in like for a 15-minute cuddle. And then I went back to work, and then I was able to do something for a straight, like solid 3-4 hours at a time.
Right.
You know, and then, you know, I would just like, he was my saving grace that I didn't get consumed by my work.
Right. Right.
So that's
That is
important.
wonderful. And moving forward, now I know this is a little cliched in the way most people use it, but you mentioned here having the work-home balance, and above it, obviously, you have be stronger than your excuses. So would it be fair to say literally nobody has an excuse anymore? Most of society is now migrating, if not already, to working remotely. So, you know, if let's say people before were just putting off their health, and you're working remotely now, you really have no excuse to be kind of putting your health on the back burner. You know, that's what it seems like to me. Like, there's literally almost no excuse now.
Well, too, it's just like also people use, their work as a venue to have that social activity, because health is
Right.
not merely the absence of disease or infirmities, right? But you also have
Right.
to take a look at like how does that parlay into like, mental, physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and whatever.
Right.
That you want to say, so that having it's just like that work, that balance
Yeah.
between, that has always been a problem, especially for people who are stuck in corporate, who
Right.
got on the corporate wheel, and all of a sudden they wake up, years later burnt out. They wake up sick. They wake up, in some level, because they never took the time to recuperate, and they are
Right.
saying when they should have been saying, I can take that on, but I need more help, instead of doing
Right.
it yourself. So if you want me to do that, great. But then I have to be able to delegate. So like what laterality do I have to be able to delegate some of this project out?
Right.
So, and
Absolutely.
then, you have, when you go and you get those things balanced, and you have that balance, then you can be stronger. It's easier. You make better decisions because you're eating better. You have more balance
Right.
because, it's just like, it's like, right side, left side. If I do that, then this is what's going to happen. If I overdo in this one area.
Right.
And also, like, and a lot of people, sometimes they get to that point, they have a breaking point, and then they blame it on their employer, which they really should not be blaming it on their employer. I think they should be blaming it on themselves for not saying no,
Right.
and creating that boundary. That's
Creating those
important.
boundaries. That's right.
Yep.
So
You know,
when one goes, I'm sorry. Yes. Go on.
and then the other two things on here is like, because when you get more out of your day, and you organize that in a fashion, which I help with the mindset and the positive mental attitude, so that you can have the breakthroughs that you need. Then we put the wellness initiatives into place that make that even more, that cements that in. So it's like a non-event, like 3 months, 4 months down the road. And that's the part
Right.
that's important. And then you can thrive,
Right.
right? That's
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, and what I really like about this is that, and this is something I kind of took. Your health is not only about you; it's about people who also rely on you as well. And you're not helping or doing any good for those loved ones if you're not taking care of yourself. So, for me, I would say don't look at self care or taking care of yourself as something that's selfish, so to say. If you need those extra hours to work out and go for a run, you know these are absolutely essential to do your duty or do what you need to do to make your life and kind of everybody else's life around you in your world
You
much
know,
better.
Sometimes too, where I really it come in very handy with my clients is that, when they're looking at time management, some people are
Yeah.
just really confused by time management. And
Yeah.
so, and so it's just like, well, how do I fit this in? Like, how do I do this? Well, if you wanted to do the exercise and you wanted to, like, do your meditation and you wanted to
Right.
do your journaling, just because it's journaling doesn't mean it has to be written down. I mean, it might be, that
Right.
might be helpful for you. That might be, like something that has to happen for you. But,
Right.
it's just like, in my 45-minute protocol that I give people to do every morning, you get hydrated, you walk, you have mindful meditation, you're grateful, and you journal all within 45 minutes, and you're
Wow.
doing it while you're doing mindful meditation type of activities. So I teach that to my clients specifically so that they can, have the best benefit of like, yeah, I got all this stuff done. I did my breathing exercises. I got my exercise in, I know what I'm grateful for. I know what I got to do that day, my 3 or 4 or 5 most important things to do that day, to
Right.
make it in order to be productive. And I'm going to do those first before I do anything else. That means emails come at the end of the day. And
That's
so,
awesome. Yeah.
and then like, and I have an article that I wrote and I give as a free gift and to people when I connect with them. It's like, I have an article called Wake Up Productive. And so in that article, it addresses like, 5 things that you can do today to be more productive for tomorrow.
Right. I will say, as far as organizing my day, I do have, little tools and schedules and lists that I do. But that 45-minute jump start, so to say, I have to start doing that. And I definitely love to learn more about it, maybe offline. It sounds great. And I think I should really
It's
integrate more of that
it's
into my
it's
mornings.
easy. It's like, like a power hour of like, it helps you become, you understand where your focus is, you understand where
Yes.
you have to, your intent is for the day, and you understand, like purpose. Then you can take
Yeah.
action, the appropriate action, like what do I need to do first? What do I
Right.
need to do second? And of course there's days that you get derailed, but it's just
Sure.
like, okay, so instead of taking this break here because of this, I'm going to take this break here. I'm going to go out and hug a tree or something like that,
Yeah.
and then come back from that. And then you're more refreshed to be able to like really jump in and have that concentric focus that you want to have in order to get the stuff done. And then you're not tired at the end of the day. When you
Yeah.
complete a
That's very
task,
true.
bless it and release it and let it go and move on to your next
Yeah.
task.
And by the way, you've said this a lot, go outside and hug a tree. And I have to say, um, if I'm having a day where I'm just doing a lot and, my head is pounding, just simply going outside, and even if I'm not doing anything, just standing outside where there's just greenery around me, it's almost like having a second wind, so to say.
Mhm.
It's almost like having another day within a day to do more. Could you explain some of that?
Because the stoma on the bottom of this is my favorite topic when I was in college, my
Okay.
botany teacher, there's more things called stoma where the oxygen exchange is at on a leaf on the bottom as opposed to the top. So when you go
Yes.
out into nature, and where you have a lot of greenery, you're having much more exposure to oxygen, which is good for your brain and good for your body. It
Right.
raises, yeah, it's a good thing. It brings, and it will also give you peace of mind. Green is always
Yeah,
soothing. It's
it
not like
is.
that shocking yellow, that you
Right.
see with some red, red lettering on it, which you're like, oh my, some of that, when I look at that, it hurts my eyes. I'm thinking, okay, next, whatever it
Yes.
is, I don't even read it. So
Agreed.
they got my attention, but they didn't keep my attention. So,
Right. So it'd
right.
be fair to say, with those who take the journey and start with your book digitally on March 10th, and if you want a hard copy on March 15th, what you'll walk away with is being stronger, making better decisions, having more balance, get more out of your day, and thrive. That seems like the formula to have a much higher and much more comfortable increased life expectancy, without a doubt.
Yeah, for sure. But just like I get asked a lot, like, why, if you were retired at one point in time, why did you come back into, work? And
Sure.
so, because there's some time that passed between that time, from when, I had a very successful practice on Cape Cod, and I left it. I sold it and I moved to Boston.
Yeah.
And I was so burnt out, from people always wanting something from me,
Right.
and me always being available and never saying no to anybody
Right.
who was in pain. That
Right.
was a rule in my office. I just figured out, like, tell them they can come in, put them in this room, put ice on it, and I'll figure it out, and I
Right.
did. I was very good with time management and being organized.
Yeah.
But I saw when I lived in Boston, and this is a shocking part of it is that, because I always wanted to live in a big city. So
Yeah.
when I lived in Boston, and living downtown in the financial district, I'd walk around a lot and I'd go certain places. I would either go sit, in Christopher Columbus Park and watch the
Right.
water
Yeah.
and watch the boats come in and out, the ferries, or, when I took a break, or I'd walk over to Post Office Square. And Post Office Square is where I saw the
Right.
most sick people because everyone's in the financial district,
Right. Right.
Charles Schwab's was there, Fidelity, you name it. It was there, Bank of Boston,
Big
or Bank
players. Yeah.
America. They're all in the one place. And so I used to watch people walk around and there was like nobody home. And,
Right.
and there's an instance that I remember that when I was walking around, I saw this guy kind of like have this slimy, greasy sweat coming out of him. And it was kind of warm outside, but I went up to him and said, "Hey, how you feeling?"
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't know." I feel like I'm tired, And
Yeah.
I said to him, and he had this kind of like grayish tint to him. And
Oof.
I said, I'm looking at him. I said, "Why don't we send you to the hospital?" He went, "Okay." And I hailed a taxi,
Yeah.
and I opened the door, got him in there, and I told the guy, "Take him to Mass General Emergency."
Yeah.
Just like, and close the door. And And I saw him about a month and a half later, and he came up to me, and goes, "Lady, I don't know what you do." He goes, "But I think you saved my life." And I went, "Wow, that's great." I said, "You look so
Yeah.
much better." I said, because I'm thinking he could easily have had the flu also, but he needed to go
Sure.
someplace where he could get that
Right.
handled and under wraps, like quickly, just in
Right.
case. It's better to be
Yeah.
safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And so I used to see people like that all the time. I used to see people like, nobody home, or like just
Right.
kind of just bad body posture. And
Right.
I would ask them how, like, how you doing? You seem like you got something on your mind. And people would, like, they would tell me all sorts of things. And I'm just thinking, they go like, God, I go, maybe you should take a break, go down to the behind the Boston Harbor Hotel. They have really nice places that you can sit, and you can watch the ferries come in, take 10 minutes and go do that. And I said, so what's really bothering you?
Right.
So, but I had these like conversations, and people would tell me a whole slew of so many things. And so
Right.
what I realized is that people were sick, and that they were sick from their environment. They're sick because of the traumas that they've incurred, like from whatever sport they were in. They
Sure.
misaligned. They have trauma. They have, from toxins,
Sure.
from the water that they drink, the air that they were breathing, and the food that they were eating, like food choices, and the such. And then also from things like, like their thoughts, when you could see people who were like deep in
Right.
thought, like when you're saying no one's home, they got to be someplace.
Right.
And the other thing that happened during that time when I was doing all that and having this realization is that I read an article that was put out by the CDC. And the CDC said that out of 212 dangerous chemicals, all the Americans that they tested positive for those chemicals, all of them in their blood and urine.
And
And
that
I
was
went,
going to be my follow-up question, actually, those 212 chemicals. Before we get to that, you were mentioning bad posture. How does bad posture affect your health, especially like the interactions between your organs and the circulation of blood and things like that? Or does it?
well, well, it does. And so the your every time that you get up, your body's exercising. It's triggering. When you start
Right.
feeling your back twitch, you've probably been sitting way too long, and for
Right.
years at sitting way too long. So that core strength is really important. And it's important, like when it's important to every aspect of health, because when you have good posture, then you have a properly functioning nervous system, or the
Right.
more likelihood of having a properly functioning nervous system.
Right.
And
Got it.
so posture, if it's this like structure is function. If you don't have good structure, then you can't have good function. At some point in time, something's got to give in order for that to, like, because it's going to keep on adapting, and you're
Right.
going to keep on adapting. It's like, the more that you have the ability to interact with your environment and adapt to it, the stronger your immune system is going to be. And you
Right.
have to have hydration, because you have muscles that are attached to bone, and that have you either sit up straight or have the ability to do it for a long period of time. So if you don't have the other components that are in that 5 pillars of health, which I have not gone over yet, but there's diet, and nutrition, which are one thing for me, because you have to have good diet and good nutrition, proper exercise, proper sleep, positive mental attitude and mindset, and a properly functioning nervous system, which is the biomechanics, structure, function, and proper posture. So
Right.
when you have that, everyone always shuffles when I say that, by the way.
Yeah. Like I
So,
just did.
the mindset, when you have the
Right.
mindset, and you have, and the mindset, and you have the structural and the nervous system doing what it best can do at that moment, and you add in the wellness initiatives, you can have such an incredible experience of having a healthy, vibrant life,
Right.
that's the given part of that. So the
Yeah.
posture part of it's huge. And like, how you sleep, do you
Right.
sleep on your stomach? Probably not. It's not a good idea. Let me just say
Right.
that, for your neck or for your low back. And especially as you get older, as a baby, they do that, but there's a lot more limber, and there's a lot more flexibility, and your
Right.
bones
Right.
haven't ossified yet. So, or the ligaments, but there's other components that do that. That's why chiropractors are so great at the biomechanics of the spine, and to keep the spine healthy and keep it moving.
And you mentioned something interesting. So sleeping on your stomach. Now, I know a lot of people that do this. I stopped doing it over time. So I sleep mostly on my back, or at least that's how I tend to fall asleep anyway. Why is sleeping on your stomach so bad for you? Now you mentioned what it does to your back and perhaps neck, but you can kind of get into the weeds about that a little bit.
Well, without going into a big, deep rabbit hole, sleeping on your stomach does not support spinal structure. So
Oh, okay.
what puts you in ergonomic rest or ergonomic correct position
Ergonomic
is your
rest.
knees slightly bent with a pillow under it and a pillow underneath your neck. That keeps your
Wow.
spine in alignment. And so if you look at somebody who's laying on the bed on the side, you want the spine to be parallel to the bed. So not with the head up or down, but directly in the center. So that would be the proper alignment for when you're laying down. When you're laying on your stomach, you don't have that structural support.
Wow. Ergonomic alignments. Now I truly learned something very, very fascinating right now. So having essentially something supporting your neck with something probably underneath your knees so they're kind of up.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Just
is why
slightly.
that position is so comfortable.
Right.
That makes
Like
perfect
if you're going to
sense.
use ice or,
Right.
that kind of modality, that would be the time to put the ice on and put it in the area so that your body can rest. It can get the rest that it needs while it's having the therapy.
That is awesome. Remember that term, everybody.
Er-
Ergonomic
Alignment.
rest. Alignment, yes. All right, moving forward. So, um, you have some very interesting, I guess you could say, facts here. A recent statistic indicated that in the near future, 2030, we will see approximately 50% of our populations stricken with a chronic illness. We are not a nation that is getting healthier, but a nation whose people are quite ill, mimicking the sick model of medicine, and it is incredibly costly. Wow. Could you talk about the sick model of medicine?
I can. I've had
Awesome.
personal experience with the sick model of medicine. Sick model, in Western medicine, it isn't like they're doing something wrong because they don't know any better because they're
Right.
doing whatever's in their box of in their toolbox, right?
Right.
And so stepping outside that toolbox, the sick model of medicine is that we can't fix you until you're sick. And they got to
Right.
know what the sickness is. So they have to identify that. So it's usually when you go to a Western medicine doctor, they go, what's the matter? They don't look for the root cause. They'll go, why do you have high blood pressure?
Right.
Like, why do you have that limp? Why does your knee hurt? You know,
Right.
like where does that come from? Why do you feel depressed? Like how are you
Right.
eating? They don't tie that back into the gut at all. And matter of fact, in 2004, and Time Magazine, if you maybe remember this, or you can look it up, it was February something, because that used to come out every week. But it
Right.
has, it's striking or the surprising link between inflammation and chronic illness and disease. That was in
Yes, I remember that
2004.
now.
They,
Yes.
they still don't know what the heck they're doing with it. I mean, they're feeding. If you are taking a med for a certain situation, like I love my cousin, but he's taking meds for high blood pressure. And he's going, well, I'm healthy because I don't have those numbers anymore. I said, but it doesn't make you healthy. If you're
Right.
taking something to mask the symptoms, it doesn't mean that you're healthy. And so, you got to go like, well, why do I have high blood pressure? Why not go back to the root of like why you have a high blood pressure, for instance, and fix that, so that you're not reliant on medications that sometimes have to keep on changing or there's side effects. And then you're taking another medication for that and another medication for those side effects and so on and so on. So the sick
Right.
model of medicine just supports you being sick. Like big pharma doesn't want you to be healthy. They wouldn't make any money,
Right.
and they certainly don't make any supplements that are worthwhile, and staying away from that type of, thing anyway. The biggest oxymoron I've seen when I lived in Washington, D.C., stumbled upon the USDA farmers market, which I thought, God, I go, whoever buys food there. I mean, it just didn't
Right.
even, I thought, wow, that was, I think I tried to flip around and take a picture of the sign. And one day I did actually get a picture of it, but I just thought I said, God, those people are out to kill you.
Right.
Because you are what you eat. You are what you're, and
Very
it's like
much
you are
so.
what you eat, you are what you're able to absorb, so,
Right.
and that stat, here's the scary part about that stat, the 2030, year
Yes.
thing, is that I read an article about a week ago, because this is already into publication. I read an article about a week ago that said that we are now at over 50% of people who have some chronic illness or disease. Now, I didn't
Wow.
check the article or fact check, because it was from a New England Journal, or it was from a Lancet type article. It wasn't
Right.
from Time Magazine or something. But it was interesting that I think we're going to reach those numbers even sooner than to
I
2030.
agree.
And we
I
already saw how costly, being sick is, and how
yeah.
much actually big pharma's made. I mean, in the last year, they made over billions of dollars on some of their on some of their new meds that they put out that that are they're supposed to have helped you, but I'm not really clear on those numbers either. So
Yeah, I would imagine they've probably had a windfall these past 2 years with everything that's been going on with
billions.
COVID, the lockdowns, and
Mhm.
kind of the overall numbers increasing for a lot of these bad things,
Mhm.
obesity, alcoholism, so on and so forth. I do have a follow-up question as a sick model of medicine. For me, it seems like a relatively recent phenomenon. If I was to remember, let's say, learning, civics, US history as a kid, it seemed like the first half of the 20th century, and maybe a little bit further after that, it just seemed like, especially in the United States, these many major diseases have been just getting cured left and right. We're looking at, polio and measles and smallpox, a lot of things that historically just killed people or reduced people to having a very, very excruciating, painful life. It just seemed like, the first half, or at least a little bit greater than the first half, those were being cured. Now it seems like, I don't know if this started in the 60s or the 70s, but going forward, looking at history books, I'm like, what major things have we been curing? Like, technology's been getting better. At least, during that time, seems like society, more or less has been getting more comfortable over time. Why, like, for instance, why isn't cancer knocked out of the park already? Like, I would think, that would have been next on the agenda after kind of going through all those other diseases in history.
Well, it goes back to your gut. And it goes back to that article back in Time Magazine in
Yeah,
2004. In 2004, they said they knew about the link between inflammation, because every one of those diseases creates inflammation in the body. So if you
right,
know where the inflammation is coming from, you can address it. But they address it with
right,
drugs, which only mask the symptoms. They don't address the
right,
actual problem. And they don't know how to go back to the actual problem. Even in Chinese medicine, at least when they're looking at people who have blood pressure, have 6 different reasons why people might have blood pressure,
right.
whether, or 8 reasons. And then what they do is they go back and go like, so, what herb can you give? What acupuncture point associated with that, so that it goes to the root, and the root problem gets addressed and fixed. Because you want to treat the symptoms, why
Yeah,
they're going on, but you also want to, in treating the symptoms, you want to, so that you can pacify them while you're working on the root cause. That's probably the
right.
best way to say that.
Yeah, and speaking of
In
root
that,
causes, kind of the reason why I started getting acupuncture in the first place was, this was probably in about 2018, 2019. So I'm about 33, 34 years old. I ended up developing sciatica in my back. So this was on my right side, lower back, and essentially the shooting pain all
Mhm.
up and down my leg, to my instep, to my ankles. And at the time, I would buy braces, those, compression wear for things like your knee and your ankle, and even kind of like your hip and lower back. And it helped, but it didn't really improve like overall function and energy and just comfort. So I tried exercising at the time, but it was still very rocky. It was like trying to drive a car with the emergency brake on. You just kind of, you feel how awkward and sluggish it is. And then I saw an acupuncturist, and she, many ways talked about the root of the problem, talked about the posture and sitting down all day. And then once I started getting acupuncture, and I guess it started, fixing and remedying some of the issues with meridians and things like that, I was then able to just comfortably exercise again. And then, like, over time, the exercise, started getting better. I continuously started getting acupuncture as well, and that really improve the overall source and function versus like, okay, I'm gonna wear these braces just to kind of keep me okay when I'm sitting down at work most of the time. So it's incredible, I have to say.
Well, it's because when you're sitting, you have 271 pounds per square inch on your third lumbar disc. When you're
Wow.
standing up, that number goes down. So it's just like, so you're not compressing the disc. That might cause, other problems with how
Right.
you're functioning, and,
Yeah.
and for the pain. So the idea of the brace is to keep things kind of like held in place, which sometimes is important to do,
Right.
because after sometimes you get adjusted, like the ligaments are really sloppy. So you've got to like feed the ligaments some nutrition to help support it. But it's just like in the structure function model, it's just like you got, you have like, well, what does that mean? Like how many pounds per square inch do I have like on this area? And no wonder the disc is, because when you're sitting, the pressure doesn't go into the right place of the disc, especially if there's a problem with the disc, it's going to bulge out to the back usually.
Right. Wow. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it does. It's like a hamburger. When
Yeah.
you're eating a hamburger.
Right. And
So,
yes, I'm sorry. Go on.
no, I was going to say this is the foreword that in the book
Yes.
that tells like the premise of the guide and things like that for the for moving forward with this book.
Right.
And it was there's chapter, like the book is situated so, because that's this next part that you're coming to really talks about that, how's the book designed. The book's designed to give you information to walk you down a specific path, so that when you get to the questions in the book, the questions will reveal to you where your weakest and strongest links are.
Absolutely.
And so when you do that, you can chart them out on a chart that's in the back of the book.
Yes.
That you can download.
Yes.
And down, either especially on the digital, that will be with the link in order to do that. So you can download that.
Right.
So you can look at what your graph looks like. So you can say, what's my health pattern? Like, I have a bunch of high scores. I have a bunch of low scores. Lower the better, by the way.
Right.
But then if like you have higher scores, then you got to look at like, well, what's that pattern? What does that pattern mean? Where do I start my health journey? And where do I spend my time, energy, and money? Because being fat, you can tell. Being tired, but you being sick, you don't know what that pattern is. And this in-depth questionnaire that covers all organ systems of the body, then what that does is it identifies that, and you can see the picture of what's going on with you at the moment. It's the first test that I do, because I don't guess, I test first, but it's one of the first tests that I do to collect information so that I can give feedback like, hey, based upon my 38 plus years, this is what I know to be true about these questions and how they answered them this way. And here's the next best 3 things you can do immediately to have better fiber, have better, mental thought, and be more productive within your day.
Right. And by the way, I have a little bit of a out of the box question here, but it's very relevant to what you're talking about. So remember as a kid, so let's say when I was in elementary school, this is early 90s, so to say. Back then, whether it was nurses or doctors, if there was let's say a child that was overweight, people, they would simply say, you're fat. You need to exercise more. You need to like adjust your diet, so to say. And more or less people kind of just moved on with their life. They either took the advice and they did it, or they didn't. As a professional in your field, is there some kind of slippery slope or pitfall with some of the recent, not all of it, so to say, but some of the body positivity stuff that's, I think, being promoted out there? Like, oh, it's okay having, let's say, maybe a 60 body mass index or something like that, or things along those lines. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's an indicator. The bigger one, BMI, is not necessarily the best indicator. It indicates, it doesn't diagnose, or it doesn't, it's a red flag. So people who have high BMIs, who are obese, they're fat. They're obese. I mean, sorry. There's just like, if you're fat, you're fat. And
Right.
Not trying to offend anybody, but it's just like there's that part of it. The big measurement that has significance is the hip to waist ratio.
Oh,
And
okay.
so for men and women, there's apps that you can go grab on Google and Apple that you can put your numbers in for that, and it can tell you your risk for disease processes.
Right.
That's a significant, but the BMI itself doesn't really say. But you've got to take a look at. You didn't see obese people. You also did in the rise in obesity, which is a disease. It's now a diagnosis. Before it was
Right.
never a diagnosis. It's a diagnosis. So clearly something's wrong.
Right.
And those numbers are significant. You didn't see heavy people back in the 50s.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. It's almost virtually non-existent. It seems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, I just wanted your thoughts on that, because if I was to like I said, comparing anecdotally some of that growing up, and by the way, not to say this was completely out of the norm, excuse me, but there was maybe let's say one or two very, very heavy people out of a class of 15 or something like that. Wasn't really the norm. And then as time went on, some of those, let's say classmates I had, some of them worked on it and they became in great shape, and some of them didn't. And I guess you could say now, being a father, and I have a 4-year-old, I kind of see it more. It's more prevalent now. Whereas I recall when I was a kid, it was, like I said, it might have been one or two, maybe three in one class, so to say.
Well, child obesity is a huge problem.
Yes.
And where children learn to eat is from their parents. And so
Right.
the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And all those
Right.
cliches that you can say.
Yes.
So, I think people should pay attention to that, and, I did an evaluation on a guy the summertime when I was up in Massachusetts, filling in for a doctor that's a friend of mine, and I always help him out. I love him. He has a fun practice. And I did an exam on a kid who's 22 years old, 21, who couldn't bend over farther than to touch his knees because he sits in front of the computer all the time.
Oh my.
He has the worst spinal posture. When I saw his x-rays, I made the sign of the cross. It's just like, and I'm not like
genuflecting. Yeah.
I'm thinking oh my God. I go, if you don't move, you're going to die such an early death. I said, seriously.
Right.
I said, you need to, get stronger. You need to work on your posture. It's not a question of you got years to do this. You need to do it now. You need to do it yesterday. Right. What was your mother doing when you were growing up, or your father? Right. What were you doing? Why were you not paying attention? And do they do the same thing? So it's just we have one thing that we do that keeps on becoming generational that has an accumulatory effect again and again. Childhood obesity is a huge problem. It's an epidemic.
Right. And like I said, tying that into body positivity, which is kind of a very, you could say, prevalent thing nowadays, although it is good to be proud of, let's say, your appearance, so to say, but we should also be truthful as far as areas that need work and how to be healthier, so to say. So when I kind of look at some of this, I'm kind of wondering as a parent, if you're kind of gaslighting your kids, you're kind of setting them up for failure a little bit. If you're saying, oh no, it's okay. If you're, let's say if you're 5 years old and you're pushing 60 or 70 pounds, something like that, for instance.
The disease association with that is huge. The chronic, that chronic number, that's probably one of the reasons why. I mean, for chronic illnesses, even pre-diabetes is an inflammatory disease,
Right.
And it's just people need to have better instruction and better path to follow for the foods they eat, the thoughts that they think,
Right.
and the structure that they need to have, and it can't, you've got to be mindful and be, insistent, on changing the consciousness of people. I mean, it's just 20 years ago, you said organic, only the woo-woo people had organic food.
Right. Yeah.
So now it's very chic to have organic food, and if you don't, you're not chic, but there's a big difference between organic broccoli and inorganic broccoli, and it's just they look the same. One's a bad date and the other ones will take you to heaven, and you'll have, and you can have the stamina and the energy that you need to get through even your longest day. It's just like you got to put the nutrients in order for your body to function, and it needs specific nutrients on a regular basis. And if you don't do that, and you stop metabolizing things, then your body's going to think, oh my God, she's starving when she's not starving, or he's starving and he's not starving, and it's going to start storing things in fat, and every fat cell has toxins in it.
Right.
It's not cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And to play devil's advocate too, but let's say if it comes to obesity and, I guess distribution of body fat, how much of that is genetics, so to say? I guess one can argue, anecdotally speaking, it seems like do some people just have an easier time? Let's say all things being equal, do some people have an easier time or maybe get more results from exercising than others?
It's not just exercise. You can't out-exercise a bad diet.
Right.
And you're not your DNA. That's been proven, because you might have you might have a predisposition for something. And if you keep on eating the same way your parents did, you're going to get it. I mean, it's just like, unless you take, do I want to end up like my grandfather died of heart disease? My father died of heart disease. My uncle had a stroke, like maybe they weren't eating very well, because you are, it's like how you get nutrition in your body is by what goes in your mouth, and you have total control of what goes in your mouth. So if you don't, it's like, that's something that you can control from and moving forward with that, you've got to be really mindful of how you nurture yourself.
Right.
It's important.
Very well said. Very well said.
I mean, I help people with that all the time. It's like people are like, well, I never knew you couldn't do that, or just like, wow, that actually tasted really good. It's just like people are lazy.
Right. And you can get into the 211 toxins that are in the blood and urine.
212.
212. Yes.
So the article that I read, that went back to 2010, by the way, because that's when I started to think about writing the book, about what was I going to write. And so that was my dilemma. I go like, well, how do I take that information and I change it into something that people can use? And that's why I came up with a book of questions that's a workbook, guidebook, and advocating tool. Because then that you can talk from a point of knowledge. But the 212 toxins is the other thing, because I'm thinking, God, I go, people are, if all these people that were tested, every one of them had it in their blood or urine, and it was only a small group of people that were tested at the time.
Right.
Then everybody has it. There's chemtrails. I mean, when I go out now and I look up at the sky and there's like, they're out there for like, I'm going, oh, there's a chemtrail. Because chemtrails just don't move. Vapor trails evaporate. But chemtrails have got like barium in it. It has heavy metals. And so we have a lot of exposure to heavy metals. When we get heavy metals in our body, they go through the gut wall very quickly, and they help damage it over a period of time. And they get stored in blood, brain, bone, and fat. That's deep. There's only a couple products. There's only one product that I really know that passes the barrier of the gut, that passes the cell membrane barrier, that extracts those toxins. 28 chemicals that you use either in your house for cleaning or gardening or something that you breathe, someplace else. So when I read that, I'm going, I just really had this like call. I'm going to start talking to people about that. I'm going to talk to people about doing a proper detox, because when you do a detox, you shouldn't feel like crap, which most people say like, well, it's just 3 or 4 days. It's just like, I don't have 3 or 4 days of my life to ffeel like crap for no apparent reason. I'd rather like tonify. And what organ's responsible for doing that detoxification process is you never detox a liver. If you do and purge it, you can cause more harm than it's natural. It's not a thing to do. You want to tonify that organ's function. So you want it to be better. You want it to detoxify better. So it takes the toxins out and puts them into your gut. But if your gut's damaged, it's just going to recycle that back again and again. And eventually where it's going to put those toxins is your weakest link. So that's why you want to know what the weakest link is on this questionnaire. As you want to know, where do I really need to pay attention to? What can I do right now, this day, this moment, to move forward, so I don't have the likelihood of something coming about, is there. Because a lot of times what you got isn't necessarily what you got. You might have, I have allergies to blah, blah, blah. You don't know if it's mold. or mildew,
Right.
or if it's sugar, or if it's a food, or if it's avocado. I know the story of a woman that was allergic to avocado, and she ate it for 10 years, and she couldn't understand why she had blood in her poop.
Oh, in her
You
stool,
know,
yeah.
and so, but yeah, in the stool, in the bowel
Yeah.
movement, she had blood. And when she would change her
Yikes.
diet, it would stop. They finally said, we're going to have to cut your gut out. And, you know, you're going to have to give you a
Oh,
bag. And
shit.
she didn't,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, literally. and,
Yeah, that's right.
and so, and so she didn't want to do that. So she went and found a doctor who thought outside the box, you know, who said, let's do a food test on you. Let's see if you have other exposures to other things that are going
Right.
on. And he told her avocados was her biggest offender. Never put that in your mouth ever again. And just from
Wow.
not eating that, her bleeding stopped, you
Wow.
know, and she didn't need a surgery. But it would have changed her life because she had 5 kids, or 5 or 6 kids that
Right.
you were little. How do you wear a bag with little kids always pulling at you?
Oh,
Can't,
yeah. And especially if the kids see the little bag, they're going to be curious. You know,
yeah.
one of them's going
Well,
to want to pull it. Trust me.
you know, you can't swim, you can't play with your kids anymore, you know, and
Yeah.
it's just like it wasn't an option for this particular woman. And that's quite a true story. You know, she was a patient of a colleague of mine. And
Wow.
so I just think, you know, there's things out there we have to, you know, be like, you know, be more inquisitive. Like, why is that? Can you tell me what can I do? I want to lose weight. I'm not losing weight. Well, what kind of foods are you eating? Are you using things like, you know, sweeteners, you know, and things like that,
Oh,
like
right. Yeah.
agave? Because everyone uses agave now. They think it's healthy. It's not healthy for you.
I was going to ask
You
you
know,
about
and
that
sugar,
agave. That's
yeah,
everywhere now. So tell me your
yeah.
thoughts.
Sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar. Whether it's
Right.
maltose, fructose, agave, like, you know, and glucose, sucrose,
Yeah.
maltose, you know, and it's whatever it is. Sugar is sugar. If you
Right.
have it and you don't metabolize carbohydrates, and sugar is a carbohydrate, you're not going to metabolize fat. So how do you ever expect to lose weight? You know, and it's
Wow.
just like,
Yeah.
and then having the right proportion of proteins, fats, and carbohydrate is really a key, and something that can accelerate your weight loss, especially if you know how to put those foods together so that your body utilizes them better. I help people with
Incredible.
that all the time. It's like, you know, I can do that in my sleep. And
Right.
because it's like, I learned that such a long time ago that it's like, wow. And I just thought everybody did that, you know, when I
Right.
first, and I thought, wow, this is really great. And how do you get to help people, you know, really, you know, it's like, you know, drink water. I mean, water is a good, like, go-to for every organ system, and
Right.
also for every pillar of health in the body. So
Right.
there's, you know, there's tons of things that people can do. They just are there. They need to be more inquisitive, you know, because nothing's more frustrating, you know, to a physician. Like, well, what have you done for this so far? They're going, duh,
Right.
you know, they don't have it. And I'm going like, okay, or they give them a solution that's known to work and they don't do it. It's just like, so
Right.
what's going on with your mindset? That's why you've got to address mindset first. You're like, what's
Mindset.
going
That's
on in your
right.
mindset that's preventing you from moving forward? Did something happen to you in your childhood? Let's talk about that. Let's get
Right.
that off. Let's get that off the plate, you know, and put in its proper place, because there's nothing truly you can do about your past. There is something that you can do about your present, but if participles in the past are hanging out there, you know, that
Right.
pop in just when you're going to be successful, or when you just like, oh God, you know, I'm going to go on vacation, you know, when I'm on vacation, I decide I'm going to have, like, I'm going to be able to have a margarita. I can't wait.
Right.
Well, if you could have promised that you could have just one and just have one, you know, what
Right.
day would you spend that on in your vacation? As if you
Right.
have it in the beginning, you're going to want to have a second and a third and a fourth and that.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
just like, so you got to look at what's your investment. Like, you know, your best investment is yourself. I don't know how to say it any plainer and more simpler. It's just you've got, like, you need your health for everything. And if you don't take the time to invest now, and you don't take time to pay the, you know, like whatever it is now to have better food, to have better solutions, then you will pay later. I mean, the average cost of someone out of pocket for diabetes is close to 20 grand.
Wow.
You know, and so,
Yeah.
like,
That's incredible.
and like, you know, you have those other chronic diseases too, and that's easily found simply doing a Google search on that. What is out of pocket for chronic illness and disease? And they have a list.
Wow. And, you know, going back to the 212 chemicals that are commonly
Yes.
found in the urine and blood of Americans, you mentioned barium. Could you laundry list some of the other common ones that are found there? You know, things that are just going to be immediately obvious once you mention it, and things that probably we interact with daily?
Well, like those things that are in chemtrails, those are easily found on Google too. But the top 4 things that people have ever been, had sensitivity is cadmium, mercury, lead, and let me think of another one off the top of my head. Those are always the first. I always get the first 3 when I get to the 4th one.
Cadmium, mercury, lead. I think of machinery when I think of that. I think of tools.
Well, petrochemicals.
I hear about that. Right.
Well, look at
yes, exactly.
like if people use petroleum jelly and they put it on their skin, 65% of what you put on your skin gets absorbed in your body.
Wow.
So you have there's things that to take as far as in a product. In the Clear Dress product that I recommend people to take for getting rid of like a lot of chemicals in your body, there's 28 known chemicals that are there. If you look at like anything that has a benzene ring in it, like the tetrachlorohydrocarbons, when you're cooking in Teflon, those things go in. Those things are in your food. Plastics. Phthalates. If if you're drinking water that's that you buy at a gas station, beware, because water that you buy at a gas station probably has been sitting outside in the sun, and those really high temperatures, it extracts they extract the plastics into you, and then when you drink those, they never go away. So.
And by the way, going further on that, so let's say for many of us who've ever worked in an office, when you're reheating and microwaving your lunch, how bad is that for you?
It depends on what you microwave it in. I mean, there's some research that says, from colleagues of mine who does a lot of research on it, he says there's, microwave is not good for you, or not is okay to use. I don't use it. I use it as little as possible.
Yeah, same here. I seldom use it anymore.
And so it's just like I use it for like maybe less like taking the chill or defrosting something, and then I take it out. But I've never really used a microwave very much at all. I mean, when I'm traveling, sometimes if I'm staying in an Airbnb that doesn't have a stovetop to be able to use, then I'd look at. Then I might use it for some purpose like that, but I don't recommend them.
Yeah.
And if you can just take the time to not use them and just like go through the way that you would normally cook. Teflon you can use, you just can't use Teflon on high heat ever. Anything above medium doesn't work.
Yeah. All right. Moving forward, your book is divided into 12 chapters, and even in just chapter 7 alone, pertaining to the immune system, there's 31 specific areas you address, and for each chapter there's kind of a rating system accompanied with questions. Could you go into how you organize the chapters of your book and why you chose to do it so like this?
Well, the chapters in the book follow the organ system. So it's just you start with what you eat, what happens to what you eat. And it looks at different parts of the first chapter is about the gut. And so it looks at 4 areas of the gut, or 4 areas of function in the gut. And so, whether it is inflammation or whether it is the colon or the small intestine, and then from the gut, food gets into the blood system and it goes to the liver. So it's kind of a progression of like, then what also happens in the gut. Then you have sugar. What does sugar go to? When you're eating sugars or eating other toxins, and then, there's like going down the line. So you end up with like male at the end. Male is chapter 11, and the 12th chapter is female. So male pertains, because there's 11 organ systems, pretty well known. If there's 12 chapters, because clearly one's for men, one's for women only. Sure. Although I have people who try to answer for both, but it's like, that's happens.
Right.
Then they realize, wait a minute, they're talking about, the prostate here.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Got it.
So, okay, I just, when I was
Yes.
doing the big ones, the biggest, heaviest one is mercury. The second one is lead, cadmium, and arsenic.
Arsenic.
Arsenic. Yeah, arsenic.
Wow. So the chemical often used to poison people is commonly found in
Oh, it's
lice.
found in, no, it's found in chicken.
Oh
You
wow.
if you found if it's a lot of like arsenic if you and it's in a lot of foods. So if you look at like what foods are
Peach
arsenic in,
pits too,
you will
right?
find
Isn't it found in certain seeds? Right? Arsenic?
yeah. I mean you would yes to answer that
Okay,
without
yeah.
getting convoluted.
Right.
But
Wow.
I just thought that was interesting. I was sitting there going, "Where's the other one?" It just came to me, so just pop back into
And
that
mercury, I would
conversation.
imagine that's probably found
Mercury
in
is
a
the
lot of the
highest.
fish. Mercury's the
It's the
highest.
Yeah, mercury is the highest.
And that often derives from fish, I would imagine, and
It
maybe some other
comes
things
from
I don't
your
know off the top of my
fillings.
head.
People
Oh,
get like metal fillings. It
yeah.
comes from they use it as a binding substance in some things. So it's just like whether or not it's inert or not. And like mercury will also when you can see pictures, or especially with lead, with like lead poisoning, you can see people like if you take especially kids who had lead poisoning, you could like take a look at their like the bones in their leg, and there would be like
Right.
these fine lines. And the only way you could get rid of it is by doing high doses of vitamin C, help with that. But there's other
Right.
venues now to get rid of some of this stuff. But you have to look at like where does like when you ingest heavy metals forever, where do they go? Like what happens to
Right.
them after you eat? Because ideally they go out of your body, but if the liver can't handle that toxicity, it gets stuck. They put it blood, brain, bone, and fat. I mean, that's and they tie in. Wait, I'm gonna put quotes around that. Arsenic, and actually arsenic with aluminum, with which is also another one,
Yes.
with Alzheimer's. They found that
Oh,
there's
wow.
certain people who have more of when they're tested, they have more higher levels of that in their system. So you've got it. It's
Wow.
just we live in a very toxic society. People just don't understand how toxic it really is.
Yeah.
And how it affects their health ultimately.
Wow. So just to be clear, so our basic fat cells are effectively like this sponge
Right.
for everything and anything.
And it's also an endocrine system. So it works with, all your hormones too. So
Yes.
that that part of it too. But it's basically a sponge. So when you start losing weight, a lot of times people don't feel good either. It's
Yeah.
because their fat cells are starting to burn off as fuel.
Right. All right. Well, moving forward to page 18, I like this chart that you have here. This really stood out to me. And pair that with the quote that you mentioned earlier, and you also mentioned in the last episode, you are not your DNA, so to say. And
Well,
yes.
so if you jump into this chart and you can see it a little bit better than I can because I'm on a shorter screen
Sure.
and so
Sure. I can zoom in here.
tell me where you're at.
Me personally.
Yeah.
Okay. To be
You yourself and you.
I would say probably 7.5. I'm trying to be as
Okay.
modest and as realistic as possible. I would say 7.5.
Okay.
Now,
So what does
anyway.
it say under 7.5? Because that's really small print for me.
Okay. It says regular exercise, good nutrition, wellness education, minimal nerve interference. Right. I would
Okay.
say, yeah, nowadays, yes, 7.5 for sure.
Okay. So then, well, you don't know if you have nerve interference necessarily, but
Right.
the 7.5 is on the lower side of it. So what does it say for the 4, 5, 6?
Okay. So 4, 5, 6 is neutral. No symptoms. Nutrition is inconsistent. Exercise is sporadic, and health is not a high priority. And I've certainly been in that zone before too.
Yeah. So, the thing is about this is it's just to give people an opportunity to check into where they think that their health is, because where they think their health is and where it actually is might be two different things.
Right.
And so how you know where your health really is that you do the questionnaire in the book, and then you fill out the chart, and then you make an appointment with me. And we talk about your findings of what the numbers were, and I ask other questions, besides the 7 questions in the front. I ask, a little bit more in-depth questions and like, what do you want to get out of the call?
Right.
And with me, and then I can like send them in the right direction. Like, this is who, you should go connect with this kind of doctor, or
Right.
you should, because you have something that really needs to have some more testing done before I would step in to be able to coach them and mentor them.
And right. And I was wondering if you could expand upon nerve interference. So, as I mentioned, I originally started getting acupuncture for, sciatica, which has greatly improved and in many days virtually non-existent, especially with regular exercise and hydration and stuff like that. But yeah, if you could explain what is nerve interference?
Well, in chiropractic, it's a subluxation. So when it's a subluxation is when two segments are out of line with one above or below, and
Yeah.
thus putting pressure on a nerve root or a nerve. So that's nerve interference. So the
Okay.
brain
Got it.
the brain is the most important organ in the body. It controls all functions of the body, and it communicates with the body going down the spinal cord. Spinal cord moves. So if there's a misalignment in the spinal cord, thus creating inflammation or pressure on a nerve root, then where that nerve root goes to those organ systems or to muscle or to ligament or to specific cells, then the function of that will ultimately be affected by that. They found even having a piece of hair on top of a nerve root, on top of a nerve, interferes with how the nerve is functioning and gives nerve interference.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Moving forward. So I like this. This book is for you if. So this is really, I think, in many ways, the hook here. And it's very simply stated here. Every time you go to the doctor, something new is wrong. I think that is very common here in the US. Any approach you try hardly works or works for a bit, then stops. I've heard that plenty of times. You should exercise better and eat better. I think 9 out of 10 people know that, to say the very least. You're ready for a simple system and make health problems insignificant. I've been there before, for the sake of productivity and getting something done. It's very easy to almost rationalize at those points. Like, okay, I'll start exercising later. I'll start eating better later. I'll start doing such and such later or at another time. And you want to know how your health is right now. And, back to the kind of the continuum chart, I guess it's very hard for most people to kind of self-diagnose, like, how is my health? Some people, based on their personality or just kind of based on knowledge, that conclusion is going to be off a lot of times.
Well, if you go from the first premise of the 7 questions, after you answer the 7 questions, the book's for you. Then you also, this brings up the rear, so to speak. This book is for you with this specific knowledge right here. So
Yeah.
when people, the thing is that a lot of people are looking to do, like, you should never DIY your own health. It's just like, because people do that and then they end up having more issues down the road. Like I could tell you stories. I mean, I have a whole bucket list of them.
I can imagine.
From people who called me up and said, Pat, what do you think about this thing? I put this cream on my face and I'm now having this reaction to it. Go to the hospital. Just,
Right.
because it's just like, or, I don't know what happened. This morning, all of a sudden my face blew up. Did you get, bit by a spider? By a bee? What meds did you take today? Go to the hospital, because there's things that, you need to get handled, and that's called emergency medicine. How people handle their health and look at, like, what is it I should eat? How should I put that food together? Like, and it's just like, it's overwhelming because we were never taught that. We were taught to take the Duncan Hines, the cake box, dump it out and make cake and have a happy birthday. We were never said, like, okay, you would never put cake and then put it with something like, like after you had a big meal and had like a pot roast on Sunday, but people do things because they saw their parents do them. And a lot of times the reason why their parents did them is because it, like, it didn't work. It's just like, that's all the food that they ever had. If you're going back to the Depression,
Yeah.
And the story about, we have Easter coming up. So the story about the Easter ham and this little girl asking her mother again and again, like, why are you cutting the end of the ham off? Why do you cut it off? And she kept on saying, because your grandma did it that way. Your grandma did it that way. And so when the grandmother finally got there on Easter, and she said, now go ask your grandma why she cut the end of the ham off. And her grandmother started laughing. And she goes, well, because it didn't fit in the pan. So we do
Yeah.
things and we don't know why we do them, instead of saying, does this make sense to me? One of my blessings in my life is that I love challenges. So when someone tells me I've got this going on, I love it. You are already in my ecosystem of love.
Right.
And then when you tell me what it is, then my next thing that I love to do is I like to make sense of it. I like to take convoluted, those issues that are a challenge for you, and I want to make them simple. I want to make them better. I want to make it so that you can go through that process without, the hassle of going and trial and error. Because trial and error sometimes can cause you a lot of problems down the line or immediately. I mean, it's just like, for instance, I had something that I'm allergic to cumin and that whole plant, of turmeric. So I had that back a year ago, and I thought I was going to die. I've never been so sick in my life ever, and it was an allergic reaction to that. But everyone else going, oh, you've got COVID. I got tested for it. I didn't have COVID. It's just like I had an allergic reaction to a specific substance that was in a food product. And they don't have to, just so you know, like if you have sensitivity, like especially people who have nut sensitivities, there's things that say, it's mandated that they have to say if it was made with soy or nuts. Right. And so also in the United States, it's GMO, by the way. So so
It's good to know.
If you're looking, well, I was at someone's house and they had chips and they had salsa, so I took, I rarely ever eat corn, any corn product. So I had one chip and I put it in my mouth and I said, there's cumin in this. And she said, the woman goes, oh, I bought this just for you, Patricia. It didn't have any cumin in it. It says it has cumin.
Yeah.
I said, that's because it's such a micro part of it. They didn't have to report it because it's only a certain percentage. Yeah. It's only a certain percentage and above from the highest to lowest ingredient. So it's just but if it's there, it's just like for somebody who has sensitivity to stuff. So sometimes when you eat things and you have a food hangover, you got to take a look at what was in your food, and that food's not your best food for you to eat.
Right. And you mentioned corn. So why do you tend to avoid corn?
All corn in the United States is GMO.
It's good to know. So all soy and all corn are genetically modified.
Unless it says organic, unless it's certified organic, then it's GMO. I don't eat corn, especially, anything that's made with corn. Corn syrup should be taken off the market. It is directly related to specific illnesses and diseases like diabetes and other inflammatory disease. Anything sugar increases inflammation.
Wow. That is definitely great to know going forward.
Yeah, you're kind of going, what can I eat? At the end, anytime I ever give a talk, people go like, so what do you eat? And it's just like, you want to know what to eat? You eat fresh, green, leafy vegetables, things that are colorful, and you eat a solid, lean protein.
Yeah. As far as proteins go, I'm sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. I'm fine.
I was going to say, as far as proteins go, eating a solid, lean protein, what can you say when it comes to, red meat, chicken, fish? Is there an ideal protein, or would it be fair to say we kind of need all of it at different points in our diet?
Grass-fed,
yes.
For beef. You have grass-fed, you have, nothing farm-raised for fish, and especially like, sea bass, tilapia, bottom feeders.
Catfish, right? Things like
catfish.
that.
Yeah, it's right there. So you want to have meats that are grass-fed, and if you're going to have chicken, you want them to be organic and you want them to be free range.
I am literally writing this down, and I think these are good reminders for all of us when we do grocery shopping.
Your grocery list goes up, but I always say, when I used to take really good care of my dog and like what I fed him, I always treated him as I treat humans, right? And for his nutrition. And his vet always said, he goes, you should teach people how to do this, and so, because he lived 5 years past his prime of his breed.
Wow.
And so, part of the his end of his life, the last month is when he really started struggling, but he also had exposure to other things that, like, a higher exposure to Wi-Fi and things like that. One place that we were staying, which I didn't realize the Wi-Fi was on the other side of the wall from where his bed was at. But
yeah.
So that was, so was the problem. But, he, like when I had something going on, I would address it first with, the lifestyle medicine pathway, which is diet first. Then I would exercise him. I would stretch him every day. And then I would do targeted supplementation for something that he had on. I would recheck his blood work up. For people who have dogs, I do that as a service. And then I map it out the same way I map out the chart for here. It's like I map it out. It's just like, what's going on? What do they all have in common? What do those high scores all have in common? You got to go, then you go to the root, and then you go, we got to fix this first, address this first, do this second, do this third. Here's the game plan. There's no process that does not require time. People have taken 30 years, 40, 50 years, 20 years, 10 years even, to get their bodies in the shape that they're already in. It's going to take more than a couple months to get, back into sync. But the one organ system in the body that really heals very quickly is the gut.
Wow.
It always interests me.
Yeah, absolutely. And for each section, each chapter of your book, you have a scoring system.
I do.
Yes.
I do. And
if you want to get into that a little bit.
I will, just quickly. I mean, when you take the questionnaire,
Yeah.
you take it in present time, you say, okay, today, in the last 4 months, have I ever had something, right? And then this gives you the definition, what we're looking at right now, of what no to rarely means,
right.
Or what sometimes means. So it tells you what that means. And you answer the questions accordingly, and don't go, oh, I already answered that question over here. What did I answer there? Just re-answer it based upon what you're reading at the moment. And it goes by organ system. So each one, tally those scores, put them in the bottom, and then transfer those scores carefully over to the chart. And then map out the chart, draw a line. Where's 32 at? Well, that's up here. This is a high.
And you're speaking of the chart towards the end of the book, correct?
Yeah, the chart toward the end of the book.
How about we hop to that quickly and show everybody?
Sure. What it looks like? Sure.
Yes. Let me just wait for this to load.
So you got to go a little farther.
Yep. And
if you see the picture of me, it's the one before. No.
Yep, I saw. Yep, right here.
Okay.
So I'm going to flip this over on its side so we can, right here. And I will zoom in on it.
Okay. So these are every organ system. These are the 11 organ systems that we talked about before. This is where the Swiss watch principle is really important. Because they're all dependent upon each other. No one you can just look at just one system. So when you get your scores from each one of these sections, when you go through the book, through those questions per each chapter, it says chapter 1, then it has section A, B, C, and D. So you go chapter 1, A number is 7. So you go find out where 7's at, and you draw 7, and then you put all the numbers in according to here. And then you take your pencil and you mark the numbers up, you look at it, and then you highlight it in, because you have to understanding the pattern. And I this is like one of the things I always have people do, no matter who you are, and that by doing this, it gives you a visual of let's see what the pattern is here. Oh, I've got a high score over here. I went to high score over there. It's just I got something going on. If anything is a high-low priority, or a moderate priority, either high or low. Those are all important, because then well, where am I at? It's like your blood workup. Blood workup that says normal doesn't mean that it's necessarily normal. It's normal, but is it a high normal or is it a low normal? Is low normal trending higher, or is low normal trending lower? And is the high normal trending higher, or is it going to go back and trying to get back to in balance to where the middle part of the normal scores are? And if it's high, so it's just so that's when I'm looking at people's blood workup and we order it. I'm not just looking at, all of them are normals, you're perfectly fine. That's not good enough for me. And if it's not good enough for me, I'm going to make sure it's not good enough for you either, because you got to know that information, because then you can go, is this organ system? This is why, your blood values, your, vitamin C, or your, in your CBC, why you have high eosinophils is because you have allergies. So
Right.
if you have allergies, how do allergies show up on this chart? Well, they show up somewhere in the gut, and they show up somewhere
Wow.
in the liver, for sure. Those are the places where I specifically look for that. And they also, you can look for them in the chapter 6 under mood, and you can also look for brain function. So when people have this allergy stuff, it's affecting more than one organ system.
Wow. That's incredible. And you know what? Let's do a little bit more of a deep dive into one of the chapters. And this one stood out to me, immunity. And, earlier in the book, one of the major questions was, does one regularly get sick with colds and flus? And even today, as we speak in 2022, flu and pneumonia, these things still kill people.
Oh, for sure. If
You
you're
know,
old,
so
especially if you're older.
right.
And you're in
So
the
it
hospital.
makes me wonder, what's going on here if, let's say we have a new flu shot every year, we have all these supplements and all these things coming out of big pharma, but people are still dying from the flu. People are still dying from.
Well, because they don't have a strong immune system. So one thing to say about that chart is, like, when you start having, you could have, like high scores and have a low immune score on this.
Here, did you want me to go back to the chart?
No, I mean, it's just like people because people know that there's a high, medium, and low priority, but you can have high scores and have a low immune system. It's just that your immune system hasn't been affected yet. Because when your organ systems start to falter, or when you start seeing higher scores, your immune system is working. It doesn't mean it's overworking, because you want your immune system to work. If you get a cold, you want to have a snotty nose because you want to get rid of the mucus. You want to get rid of the phlegm. So are you healthy when you have signs and symptoms? Lack of signs and symptoms doesn't mean that you're healthy. And that's what the fallacy in the last couple of years is, because it's just like when people start to get sick, they're going, oh my God, and we all know that we've all had that itchy, scratchy, icky throat in the back.
Yes.
It didn't mean it ever manifested into something, because you took care of it immediately. You did things, you gargled with vinegar and water. You did like some over the counter, like home remedy type things that you could use, lemon and juice and water. You flushed your system out.
Oh yeah.
And it helps get rid of that. But just because you have, you can have a lower score in the immune system, but have higher scores along in the chart. That just tells me that, that something like, whatever's going on hasn't affected the immune system, so it starts to falter. But when the immune system starts to falter and you get exposed to things like the flu and other things like that, you have huge problems. You have an immune system that could go into cytokine storm. And that's something that, can be deadly if that happens, given the right other circumstances.
Right. All right. So without giving away too much, because we did cover a lot of the book already, but let's, yes, but let's dig a little bit into, chapter 7, especially with COVID and the lockdowns and just the overall increasing mortality of society. A lot of this does tie to our immune system. So let's just see functionally, how does one go about, this chapter? So now we see here the questionnaire that each reader of this book has to ask, his or herself. I like this. Eyes, tear, or water. Stringy discharge from the eyes. Itchy, sore, or congested feelings in ears. Discharge from ears. Nose continuously stuffed up. Tend to snore loudly. Runny nose. Nose bleeds. Rough sounding voice. You know what? These are all very good questions. And in fact, these are really like the obvious indicators, like in everyday life, I have to say. And by the way, I'll even admit, for like chapter 6, it's gotten much better over the time, but I used to snore loudly. Now, not so much anymore, but I used to anyway. So,
but that's because you're eating better and you don't have as much inflammation. But But these questions, if you see them, they're all around your face, right? So a lot of them. So that's where you have the first entry of something that the Chinese would call an evil, right? That's where you first have the entry, and then it loves the mucous membrane in there. So it's like if you create the right environment for that microbe or that virus or whatever, it's going to love you even more. It's going to dig deep. and it's gonna
Right.
become part of that situation. And that, so, this looks at the primary, like the about how how your first layer of your immune system is working.
Right.
But like I said, you can have higher scores that might be more significant, that could be high, that are working on this, because at one point in time when your immune system starts to go, then you're going to have more frequent colds. You're going to
Right.
have, when you have exposure to something, whatever's going around, you're going to get it, kind of
Right.
thing.
And by the way, number 8, nosebleeds. What does that tend to indicate?
Heat.
Heat.
um,
Okay.
in Chinese medicine, it indicates heat.
They say
And
too much
so,
fire, right?
yeah, too much
Something along
fire,
those lines.
they
Yes.
say, you have heat rising up, and so, and when you have that, when you start to get, that's like a little bit, you might relate it to a little bit of fever or something like that also. And that,
Right.
so, but when someone has a nosebleed, it's just like the capillaries all of a sudden release, and they
Right.
break. So it's just like, what's that from? Is it from an organism? Is it from bacteria? Is it from, in Chinese medicine, they would say it's heat, and it's usually heat coming from, or it's a reason in Chinese medicine.
Right.
There's more than that.
Yeah. In my early 20s, and by the way, and this is when I was very active, especially, I would get semi-frequent nosebleeds, like once every 2 weeks or something like that. It was just very mysterious. I didn't feel ill or bad or something like that. I used to joke, oh, maybe it's because I was just kind of more of a hothead back then. But like, I used to kind of just get them, like, what the hell is this? And I'd have to pull out a tissue and whatnot. So that, I guess that explains it then. And as far as number 2 and 4, stringy discharge from eyes, what does that indicate?
Mucus.
It's
Mucus
mucus.
is
Okay.
it's something's like a simple answer. It's like when you have, or
Right.
like when you have like those, like kind of what people call sand.
Right.
It's just like, it's like, your eyes will, your body's trying to fight stuff off. So when
Right.
it does that, it's going to try to push things out of your system and out of your body in that direction. That's why you have the mucus. That's why you cough up sputum, and you don't ever try to swallow it, because you can have that feeling, like when people start to get cold, that sometimes they have nasal drip in the back. They should try to spit that stuff out all the time. Chinese are really good at, when I was in China studying, that was one of the
Wow.
biggest things. I went like, wow, everyone spits here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
It makes sense.
and now
I
it
want to
makes
swallow
sense
that.
to me,
Yeah.
because like so many places are so polluted, and
Right.
it's just like, if you take those, those things in, and so your but that's the first, point of invasion in the body, so to speak, is from the nose and from the mouth, but primarily the nose. That's why it's like,
Right.
like the itchy nose, scratchy eyes, stuff like that.
Yeah. And number 4, I want to ask us. So discharge from ears, like earwax. The color of the earwax, or let's say the texture, how significant is that?
Well, I just, the earwax, when the body's got things that it is trying to exude away from the body, I think
Yes.
that in Chinese medicine, they would tell you the darker the color, the more significant it is,
Okay.
and so, but everyone has everyone has earwax that your body's, that produces and tries to get rid of.
Right.
And some of it's there for protection. So like, you ever have an insect that crawls in your ear, it's just like,
Right.
you want it to, so that it's not going to cause problems for you, and
Right.
so, and also pollen. I mean, if you ever used any of those air candles, and one of the biggest things that you see in the air candle is not only the wax, but all the pollen. And you realize,
Right.
or
That's right.
dust, you're
Yeah.
going like, oh my God, that's so disgusting.
Yeah.
That's in
And
my
there's a lot of
ear.
it too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
I've had it
sure.
done before. I was like,
Mhm.
it was like a candle. It had to have been about this big. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing like 8 or 9 inches. After I
Mhm.
was done, it was literally just a tube. I'm like, and it was just filled. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow,
You have to be careful of like
incredible.
whoever's doing it, that they don't burn your hair or anything.
Right. Yeah.
But and you're laying usually on your side with the candle in a certain position, so that it creates a barrier of air, so it sucks whatever is in there out.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so
That makes sense.
there's a way to do that, and that, like, muslin is better than the other paper products that they use for that, because it doesn't burn as fast and it burns more
Yeah.
evenly, and
Got
the
it.
temperature is consistently. This I know about.
Yeah, no, this is all rich information. So going forward from this, even more questions that are, concerning, and I think we should all ask this. So, Sudden difficulty breathing. What is that necessarily indicative of, so to say?
Well, it could be indicative of blockage. It could be indicative of, anxiety. What chapter are you
Right.
on?
This is chapter 7. So we're going through the immune system.
Okay. Oh, this is so okay. All right.
Yeah, this is still immunity. Yeah, this is the
okay.
continued.
Because that's
this is the second
questions.
part of the
That's
checklist.
questions in another
Yes.
place in there. So I just wanted to make sure where
Yes,
you're at.
I know. I saw.
So when you like sudden breathing, it's just like you might have, might have sudden shortness of breath. You might have starting of the accumulation of fluids in your lungs, so you can't
Wow.
breathe deep. Your diaphragm could be spasming. There's a lot of things. I mean, it's not just one thing.
Right.
And it's like one thing I want to just remind here, because we're doing this, but I'm telling to people, you cannot focus on just one question, or you cannot focus on one area. That it's a combination of the answers and the whole thing, pieced together. That's important.
Of course.
But, if I see a high score in an area, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at specifically what they answered. And I might ask them more in-depth questions about those answers. So each chapter, you'll notice, has notes in it. So that when you're writing
and I was
down,
actually about to move to that section too. Yeah.
If you each chapter has notes, so in the chapters that have notes, you can take down like, oh, I need to ask about this, or ask my mother about this, or because a lot of times we don't remember. We expect our parents to remember all sorts of things that we don't remember about growing up.
Yes, and I've read and completed different health books, and especially covering immunity and nutrition, and I have to say, your questions are more than just adequate. These are very, very specific, simple, straightforward things. It's not simply, okay, do you tend to be short of breath? Or, like I said, I encountered this in a lot of other health books. It's just very, very broad questions that you can almost just answer either way. And there aren't nearly as many questions. At least these are simple, detailed questions, which I think we can all answer reasonably.
Well, somebody asked me one time, in my first edition, was that, what do you, what can you do for myofibrosis or chronic fatigue? And I said, you didn't read the book, and I had this conversation with back and forth.
Right.
And so I said, when you read the book, let me know. And so this same person left a review, and she said, she goes, what occurred to me is in Western medicine, they don't know how to diagnose you until you have the flat tire. And they don't know, like, when you keep on putting air in the tire and you don't realize that you have like with having the air in the tire, it's just like you keep on putting air in the tire and you find out like 5 months later that you have that you have a bigger problem and you got to take the nail out, and it's just like, sometimes it can be repaired very easily. Other times it's right in the corner of the tire where you have to go buy a whole new tire. So you don't want to wait for it till you have a blowout and have an accident and almost kill yourself on a highway. You want to you check those things on a regular basis. And it's like, for people who are doing a business, you don't do a business with the idea of like, I'm not going to pay attention to that, until that one thing. I'm going to wait till I go, bankrupt before I do something about my business. I mean, you don't do that. You make a plan. You put things in place. You organize things so that they're easily accessible and doable.
Right. And by the way, I absolutely agree. This is a great book. And in fact, I think when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to all of these fundamental issues with health, these are things we should all learn early in life, or at least now learn as fast and as early as possible. If you have this resource in front of you, please get it. Dr. Boulogne's book is available on Amazon, both digitally as of the 10th and both in physical hard copy in form as of March 15th. These are, just from what we covered today, her questions are pinpoint surgical strikes, so to say, as far as what you need to acknowledge in figuring out your own health. Because listen, as knowledgeable as even I like to think I am, I can't even be entirely objective, not without a question or a roadmap to, essentially go through and actually ask these questions and, write my own notes and score and tally these up. I think, I think they always said, as far as like the practice of law, like, representing yourself in court is like doing surgery on yourself, so to say. An old professor, used to say that, so to say. But I think when it comes to health, especially when it comes to health, which should be at the top of everybody's list, self-learning is not enough. It's great, and I think it's better than no learning. But taking that a step further, if you have a resource like Dr. Patricia Boulogne here with her new publication, I think it behooves all of us to take a really deep look in the mirror, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Where are we right now? This is a litmus test, so to say, and it's going to give us a color at the end as far as what our health is going to be. And from there, and with that knowledge, where do we go and how do we improve on things? So for all viewers that will be tuning in, this episode will be available on Spotify and Apple, along with the other platforms that I post this on, including Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch TV, and others. So in the post that I will be putting up, you will find all the information you need to access the digital version of this book, the hard copy version of this book, and the other resources that Dr. Boulogne is providing as well. And I would highly suggest to anybody, if you are serious, if you are sincere, and you are ready to not waste another moment, reach out to Dr. Boulogne to start your health journey. And Dr. Boulogne, I have to say, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show today and having the opportunity to really do a deep dive in your launch of this incredible book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? Listen, people, there is no bullshit in that title. And I'll tell you this, when it comes to any type of book, I think what a lot of people don't like is bullshit. Seriously. And I think, listen, we could call it like it is. Some books are just a little too soft and like, yeah, you're great as you are. If you do these little tidbits here, it can help, but you're still great. Like, no, people get these books because they know they're not great as they are, and they want to fix it. And I think more books that are going to help people, to start diagnosing what they want to work on. The theme, the title, it's got to hit you like a sledgehammer. It has to. It can't be too soft. Why are you sick, fat, and tired? That is our living experience, in each and every moment. It's, much of it is how you physically feel. Are you sick, fat, and tired? Or are you healthy? Or are you lean and energetic? That is the question I want to be asking and perhaps answering, let's say at the end of this journey. Am I slim? Am I lean? Am I healthy? Am I energetic? I think that's where we all, want to be. And I do like the fact here, Dr. Boulogne, you don't use kids' gloves when it comes to this. Like I said, many of these health books are or you can say self-help health books, they are way too soft, way too nice, and way too kind of almost enabling. I will say that, enabling. Because, if I go to, let's say, at least when there was more of them, Barnes & Noble, you go to the health book section, and it's like, you're looking at these health books, and they're just way too nice. You're good the way you are, but I'm like, no, not good the way I am. I want to get better. I want to get to best right now. So, hence the title here. I want a drill sergeant, okay? I don't want a hippie telling me what to do, so to say.
Well, one thing to remind your listeners too is that on those specific days of the 10th and the 15th, the book is, I have gifted a discount for the launch, which makes it incredibly feasible for anybody to get those books. And so my recommendation is the hard copy, actually, because I always want something in hand.
I'm the same way, yeah.
And in digital, I just forget about it. I mean, I can't tell you how many books I bought on,
same here.
on Kindle that I've never ever got to. But the point is that there is a way to do that. Mediocrity, I mean, it's like you do nothing changes. In fact, it probably gets worse. Mediocrity for me also, is not okay. And that's not the way I
I
want to live
agree.
my life. And that's not where I want. That's not my vision of how I see millions of people. I
Right.
want them to have the opportunity to make better decisions about their health. And this book is an opportunity for them to actually grab that and carpe diem it, and then, it's just like, it's all up to them about what they do for their next feet. Where do you step next? What is my next best thing to do? And some things it's just very, very easy. Sometimes it's
Right.
complex, but there's no process. It does not require time. And you cannot put the cart before the horse, and
Right.
you better know how to drive the cart, after the horse is in front of it and attached, so you've got to have the information so you can make those decisions that are best for you and your family and those other people that you love.
Yeah. And by the way, even just to preface what I just said earlier, yes, when you want your journey into better health, you want a drill sergeant. But I would also say don't be too hard on yourself where you start discouraging yourself and you start getting lazy or you start kind of talking yourself out of this. Like I would say for anybody, I would imagine, and of course when I really do my own deep dive, other than purely just the reading so far, but when I start answering this, one of the things to keep in mind too, no day is going to feel amazing when you're doing this. And in fact, I think it's going to be being able to endure and just kind of persist and keep doing it. Doing those small steps.
It's all about mindset. You got to start with mindset and a positive mental attitude. And that combined with that, good posture, and the other wellness initiatives, the only thing that could possibly happen with you is success.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I like success. Do you like success?
I do too. And by the way, listen, even if you miss today, keep going. Each time you throw, each time you punch, you're going to get closer to the target, no matter who you are. It's those small 20-minute workouts you do versus doing like 1 9-hour workout during the week. It's going to be those incremental steps that are going to get to where you are. So listen, just do it.
Yes.
We only have so much time. And by the way, you make a mistake, so what? You don't have a great day. You half-ass it sometimes. But you know what? That's still better than what 9 out of 10 people are doing, which is not starting at all. So go for it. That's what I say.
I am so lucky that you are my cheerleader.
Oh, thank you. And listen, I am so lucky, for you to generously, give your time to come on to this show and go through this book. And, even though, let's say this is mostly a show about blockchain and cryptocurrency technology, we need to switch it up sometimes. And you know what? Your health is just as important as your knowledge in this space too. So you need to know what's under the hood of your car, so to say.
If you don't have good health, how are you going to spend all that money that you're going to make? I mean, seriously,
Absolutely.
you'll be spending on getting better as opposed to having fun, doing good, having fun, and thriving. So thank you so much. I really appreciate being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Boulogne. And like I said, everybody, all the information regarding this episode and this book will be posted today. So please stay tuned, watch the show, check out the book on Amazon, hard copy, PDF. I personally prefer a hard copy. Like you, I prefer to have something in my hand. I tend to highlight and tab the crap out of my books. So please, people, if you want to start your journey, and if you want to start it in a very clear, organized fashion, do it here. Like the title, and like Dr. Boulogne, there is no bullshit to any of this whatsoever. It tells you what you need to do, and it tells you essentially how to stay the course while you're doing it. This isn't a book to tell you, oh, you're perfect the way you are. Nobody's perfect, and certainly nobody's perfect the way we are. We get these things, we read about these things because we want to achieve and we want to win and we want to get to where we desire. So this is it, and this is the real deal. And you know what? I got to say, I think we need more of that in this day and age. Seriously, no bullshit. Here's a sledgehammer, start whacking.
Then you're going to have to go find all those black and white people. It's just like people who have black and white mentalities. Like because everyone's like, oh, you should be more gray. Well, the thing is that, if you're looking at the gray part of a grocery store is the middle part. The black and white part is the area around it. And that's where you should be doing all your grocery shopping, is in that area.
Right.
If you go to a real grocery store.
Right. That's a good point. Because all the snacks and the sodas, it's all in the middle of
it's all in the middle of the store. It's like, and that's when you go by and you're going like, oh, and then your lizard brain will say like, you deserve that Hershey's bar.
Right.
Hershey's bars are not good for you.
No,
You know,
they're absolutely
chocolate's
they're,
good for you over 85%, dark chocolate, but Hershey's bars are not good for you. Sorry, Hershey. just,
yeah.
just a fact.
Yeah, and
So,
I'll even say, admittedly, too, like I've bought some of those bars that are like 85% and up of cocoa, and
mhm.
they're bitter, but I like it. But I also feel more energetic. Like there's never this sluggish feeling after I eat like an 85% and up of like a chocolate bar.
Well,
85% cocoa and up, so to say.
that's true, but what it also does is it helps you with stress hormones, so a little bit,
Oh,
only
okay.
a small piece,
Right,
and also it helps you digest your food after you have it with a meal. Uh,
right.
so anyway, that's it.
Absolutely.
That's all she wrote.
Yep, that is it. That concludes today's special of Dr. Patricia Boulogne's launch of Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, and Like a Scratch Record. I am going to repeat this again. You can find the digital version on March 10th on Amazon, the physical hard copy version on March 15th. I will be posting all the information regarding the book and this episode today. So stay tuned, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.